I'm Fifi, and this is Going Deeper with the Lord. So, it's Monday, and I've said it before that on Mondays, I just share things that I'm continuously learning about doing relationships with others and doing relationship with the Lord on a daily basis. And today I'll just be sharing something that the Lord revealed to me that at the time I didn't understand it fully, but as I walk with the Lord on a daily basis, it became clearer and clearer, and I was able to even see it in scriptures. So in 2021, September 2021, God gave me a promise that was so ridiculous that I felt like, okay, this is just the devil playing around with my mind. This is just the devil wanting to invade my mind and make me focus on this thing instead of focusing on the Lord. So because it was just hard to believe, and I knew that it wasn't my mind. You know how sometimes we can say, God, is it you, me, or the devil? It definitely was not me. And I told the Lord, I said, no, it's not me. I cannot think at this level. I cannot desire at this level. I cannot pray at this level. So this is definitely the devil. So what I did was I went on a 3-day fast, water fast, no social media. I reduced communication even with family and friends, because when I'm fasting, I really want to cut off all the noise and cut off all the distractions and cut off all the things that are time consuming, in order for me to prioritize the Lord and prioritize my communication with the Lord in that fast. So that's what I did. I pursued the presence of the Lord, and I was sitting in the presence of the Lord and just asking the Lord to say, Lord, is this you? Because I don't want anything that will distract me. At the time, I just started working with the Lord. I started working with the Lord in 2020, and this was 2021. So it had been a year plus just working with the Lord, and I was growing rapidly. So that's why I thought it was just the enemy. So I prayed and fasted and said, Lord, is this you? If it's you, please let me know and confirm it to me. So I fasted. The first day, God didn't say anything. Second day, He didn't say anything. And the last night of the fast, I had a dream. And at that time, I was still a social worker working in Northern Canada as a child protection worker. So my burden for working in indigenous communities was just the lack of resources. And it used to really, really bother me for us to drive the kids and take them out of their community, because there were no available foster homes. There were no youth homes. So I just used to say, Lord, I want you to bless me so much that if I see a need, if I'm burdened by a need, I don't have to be prevented from taking action because of money. I want you to bless me so that when I see a need, I'm able to address it. But I was a government worker, although it was a 6-figure job, but it wasn't enough for me to do anything for anybody. So it was such a burden. And on that night, last night of the fast, I had a dream that me and my colleague were collecting donations from community members in order for us to build the youth home that I desired to build for the youth. The Lord said to me in the dream, He said, I didn't call you to do this. The only thing that I want from you is obedience and availability. And He said, give people back their money. So I'm dreaming. So I went to my colleague and say, hey, God told me that He didn't call me to do this, that we should give people back their money. And we gave them the 3 million that we had collected. And it was so funny because the 3 million was in 3 banknotes. It was just 1 million, 1 million, 1 million. So we gave people their money. But in that dream, I remember saying, Lord, obedience is easy. I can easily obey. It is even much easier than collecting money, building the structure, hiring people, and running the youth home. But I didn't know that obedience is our relational currency with the Lord. That is how we do life with God. That is how we are able to discern His voice better. Because if He says, do this, if He starts like teaching us how to obey Him, He starts with really small steps. So if He says, do this, and we do it, and then He says, do this, and we do it, it just gets bigger and bigger, and He's able to trust us with our bigger responsibilities, because we are consistently following His voice, and we're consistently following His commands, and consistently being obedient. So I didn't understand that obedience was a big deal when doing life with God. And I ended up just like, even when I started reading the Bible, I ended up seeing it in the scriptures that, yeah, Obedience is our relational currency with the Lord. When he says do this, when he says obey my commands, that we have no other choice but to obey him. Because if we are surrendered to his voice of authority, if we are surrendered to his authority, if we are surrendered to him, if we don't obey his voice, then it means that we are obeying a different voice. For example, if we take the life of Moses, Moses was disqualified from entering the promised land because he disobeyed the Lord. The Lord told him to go and gather the people around the rock and talk to the rock, but instead he struck the rock. So he was disqualified because of disobedience. Even King Saul, he was disqualified from reigning over Israel because he disobeyed the Lord. So obedience is a big deal. We even see with the life of Abraham, when God said, leave your people, leave your country to a place that I will show you. He just said yes, and he followed the voice of God without even knowing where God was taking him. So obedience is very important in our doing life with God. But I got to understand it as I was growing in the Lord. But the other thing that I didn't fully understand was availability. I didn't know what God really meant when he said, I want you to be available. And as I was just obeying the Lord and working with the Lord, I ended up realizing that obedience and availability go hand in hand. When God says, do this, and we need to obey. If he says, go and bless this sister, I cannot say, oh God, this $100 that I have, I'm gonna pay my bill. Let me bless the sister next week after I get paid. No, I need to be available for his use at any time, so that when he says, go do this, I'm available to go, because we are his hands and feet. We are the hands and feet of Christ on earth. So if he's saying, go bless this person, and instead I'm saying, no, I'm still doing this, it means that I'm not available to go carry out the mission that the Lord wants me to do at that particular time. So I'll even just give an example of what happened. Like I said, I started like just following the Lord in 2020. But because I was living in a very isolated community, like with less than 700 people, no noise, no traffic lights, two grocery stores, small grocery stores. So it was a really good place for God to grow me. I was isolated socially. I was isolated from family members and everything. I was isolated from entertainment and everything. So I grew so much in the Lord because I was in that secluded place. After I left my job to just follow the Lord and do what he had for me, I was still living in isolation. He had taught me to live in isolation and to depend on him, and to cut off all the noise, cut off social media, cut off secular entertainment, cut off secular music, to reduce the distractions in order to focus on him. But like I mentioned, I didn't fully understand the concept of availability. As I was growing in the Lord, I realized that obedience and availability go hand in hand. So in 2022, I was serving in a different church, but I would just go online and watch other pastors, other podcasts. I was not only just committed to my church, I was listening to other voices. Plus, I was new in the faith. I hadn't been in church for over 20 years. So I was growing, and I was willing to use anything and everybody to help me in my journey with the Lord. So in 2022, I came from work and I wanted something to watch, and I realized that it was summer of 2022, and I realized that Forward City Church in Columbia in South Carolina. I got online. I wasn't even submitted to the authority of that house. I wasn't even following them. So I just opened the internet and I saw that there was a live video that was going on. And I had heard Pastor Travis preach before, and I listened to some of his songs and I liked him. So I tuned in, I clicked, and I realized that there was a revival that was going on. And it was the first day of the revival. And I kid you not, the presence of God, they were still going through worship, but the presence of God drew me in so much that I zoned in and I sat there and I started watching. My daughter and my granddaughter were visiting me at the time. I even told them, I said, hey, I'm attending church. You guys sort yourself out. If you need anything, go to the kitchen, find something to eat. But I didn't know at the time that it was a 7-day revival. So I didn't want distraction. I told them that I wanted to see what was going on. And as the worship was going on, and then they called for an offering, then they announced that it was like, I learned just from there that it was a 7-day revival. There was a 7-day revival. And the Lord dropped in my spirit. He said, I want you to give $100 every day for this revival. And I said, Lord, they said it's 7 days. 7 days. So that meant that I had to give like $700 at the end of the revival. And I had a good job. It was a 6-figure job. Money was not a problem, but I was not even serving in this church. I had my church and I was just visiting for the first time. And the Lord said, I want you to give $100 every day for this revival. So I obeyed. At the same time, I didn't know that the Lord had told Pastor Travis Green that he wanted people to have access to that revival, that they shouldn't charge people to come to the revival. They shouldn't charge a registration fee or anything. So they, on the other side, had to depend on the Lord. I learned something through that whole thing. So I ended up obeying the Lord. I've talked about this story in one of my longer videos where I was talking about giving, what the Lord has taught me about giving, that we don't give to get. We give because we are available to serve the Lord. When I realized something at that moment, that when God's children are on their knees praying and believing Him for something, He is looking around amongst some of His children to find people that He can trust to go and be an answer to their prayers. So that is something that I've learned about the Lord, that when somebody has a need and they are crying to the Lord, say, God, I don't have money for rent. Lord, I'm going to be evicted. Lord, my house the bank is repossessing my house. God looks amongst His children. They are crying to the Lord, but God is looking amongst us to find someone that you will trust to go and answer that prayer. Because remember, we are the hands and feet of Jesus. If Jesus was on earth, He would have gone to them and answered their prayers. But because He's not here, He's looking for someone who is available to go and be an answer to that prayer. So yes, I obeyed. But when I realized that revival that the Lord had talked to Pastor Travis Green to say He didn't want Pastor Travis Green to charge people for that revival, I felt at first I was struggling. I was struggling to pay like $700. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. But because I wanted to please the Lord, because I knew that I'm doing life with God, I cannot say no. What would be my reason? I had money, it was in the account. So yes, I did. But when I realized that I wasn't doing God any favor, for me to say yes, I wasn't doing God any favor. He was doing me a favor by providing me an opportunity to contribute, to be an answer to a need that was in the house. Because when these people say, when there is a revival, or even like any church, if there is something that is going on in the church and God say, don't charge people, they need money to pay the musicians. They need money to pay the worship leaders. They need money for the people that are flying in to come and preach, because it's a 7-day revival. It means that they have people flowing all over from all over the country to come and preach. So they really need money to take care of their guests. But imagine God saying, I don't want you to charge people. So God is banking on the people that He's going to identify to say, I have sister this, brother this one, sister that one, that I can trust that they are going to meet the need of that house. Yes, brothers and sisters, that's what I learned about availability, that availability is obedience, and availability is when God says, go do this. We say yes, and then we start moving. We don't say yes and we start trying to negotiate with the Lord, because if He decides to act now, we cannot delay Him. Because if we say, yes, I will do it, And then I keep on like looking at the bank account, and I keep on like stretching the days. It means that I'm not available to be used by God for that particular instance. He can easily step over me and go and find somebody that will say, yes, Lord, I'll go and bless them. And that was not the only opportunity. I also had an opportunity to be a blessing to somebody back home in Botswana, who was their house was about to be repossessed by the bank, and this person, I'd cut them out of my life. So just see how God works. I'd cut them out of my life because of an incident that happened when I visited Botswana, and it was related to money. And the comment that he made, I realized that, man, people back home in Africa, they think that we have lots of money here in the Western world flowing around. They don't know that we work hard for this money. But she made a comment that made me realize that, you know what, I don't want people like this in my life. So I cut her off my life. And she ended up realizing that I had cut off her out of my life. But at that time when her house was about to be repossessed by the bank, she said she was in prayer. She sent me a message, and I hadn't talked to this sister for over 2 years. And she sent me a message and said, hey, Kev, I want you to pray for me. The bank is repossessing my house. It's a long story, but I'll just say it in passing. And I read the message. It was just on the screen, and I didn't even press to read more because it was time for me to meet with the Lord. I just read the message and I felt indifferent. But that morning, God talked to me through a sermon that was preached by Bishop T.D. It was an old sermon where he was preaching about Nehemiah. And I think the title of the sermon was Living Bigger Than Me. And he preached that message that I felt the conviction that God wanted me to bless that sister. So I ended up calling, and I realized that they were so backed up in arrears that they had to pay like 80,000 pula, which is like 8,800 Canadian dollars at the time. And I said to the Lord, I said, I don't have that money to do that. But at the end, I ended up like, just with charges and everything, I ended up like paying a bigger sum of money. I ended up sending close to $7,000. Yes. I ended up sending her up to $7,000 because she had told me that they had raised a certain amount of money. But in my contribution, I sent her money, and then I sent her the money to pay the deputy sheriff who was handling the case. So now back to obedience and availability. Back to what I was saying, that when God's children are on their knees praying and they have a need, God is looking amongst us, kingdom citizens, to find somebody that he can trust to say, okay, Fifi, you go and be an answer to that prayer. You go and bless that sister. You go and bless that ministry. You go. So giving, in closing, giving is not us giving to get. I get disappointed when at the time of offering, when an emphasis is put on Malachi 3 verse 10, that the God said, yes, God's word said that give tithes and offerings to the house and test and see if I won't open the windows of heaven and pour a blessing on your life. But if we just give because we want God to do something, we are missing so many opportunities to be used by God, for God to trust us. Because if when doing life with God, if when we are growing in the Lord and we are saying, God bless me to be a blessing to the families of the earth, we start small, like the examples that I gave. If God says, go do this, go do that, because he gave me a good job. At the time, he gave me a good job to be a social worker making lots of money. I was able to bless many people, even family members and ministries that I was not even connected to, but I was being blessed by their content online. So when God says, go bless this one, go bless this one, and we obey, he's able to realize that, oh, okay, I have my soldier here, this soldier there, they are always available. He's able to pour more into us because we have shown him that we can be trusted. Even when we have little, we can be trusted to be a blessing to others. So when we exercise that muscle of be obedient and available to be used by God, it means that God is able to trust us even with the much, because he knows that when he gives us more, we have picked up the normalcy with him, that when he says, go feed them, I'm going to go feed them. Go bless them, I'm going to go bless them, because I'm understanding that I am the hands and feet of Jesus Christ on earth. I've heard it said before that partial obedience is disobedience, meaning that if God says, Fifi, go bless somebody. And I say, yes, Lord, I will do it. But I'm still here contemplating. I'm still here counting my coins and not doing it. I'm disobeying the Lord because I'm not doing what He's asking me to do. Even in the Bible, when God called Moses to go and tell Pharaoh to let his people go, Moses was tending his father-in-law Jethro's sheep. He never said, okay, Lord, let me go talk to Jethro and give him time to find somebody to tend for the sheep while I go and take on your assignment. No, he said yes to the Lord, and he knew that, okay, Jethro will take care of his own. I'm going to take care of God's business. Even in the New Testament, when Jesus Christ was calling one man, and the man said, let me go bury my father, God said, let the dead bury their dead. I don't think Jesus Christ wasn't saying that we should abandon everything and just run after him. But in a way, I think it's a principle of teaching us that when God says come, we cannot be looking back. Just like the Bible says that we cannot put our hands on the plow and keep on looking back. We are going. Even when Elijah anointed Elisha, Elisha went and bent up his plowing thing and he cooked meat for the people. I think that's what he did. Yeah, he bent the plowing tool and then he cooked meat for the people and then he took off and started following Elijah. So this is what availability means. I'll give the last example. Even with Mary, the mother of Jesus, when the Lord appeared to her that she was gonna bring the Messiah on earth, she never said, oh, I'm engaged. Let me talk to Joseph so that he can hurry the process of marriage so that we do it in a way that is acceptable in the community or in our culture. No, she just said yes. She didn't think about the consequences. She didn't think about Joseph, what Joseph was going to say. She was just available to obey the voice of the Lord and to follow God. So, brothers and sisters, I just wanted to share this with the hope that it will bless somebody. Sometimes when God is telling us something and we say yes, we don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know the losses we are going to encounter. We don't know the consequences of what we are saying yes to. But I've heard Dr. Charles Stanley say that obey God and leave all the consequences to Him. When we trust the Lord, we trust that He will never mishandle our lives. And we just obey Him and we are available for His use so that we can be the hands and feet of Jesus on earth. Brothers and sisters, that's all that I wanted to share. And I pray that this will bless somebody out there. Amen.